Hello, everyone. Welcome to another exciting episode of the Working in Tech live stream. And today I'm really excited because um, one of the things that mind is that, there are a lot of people who are business savvy individuals or entrepreneurs wondering if a career in tech, is out of reach or if their skills are, in demand in tech. And if you're one of those people, then today's your lucky day because I guess today, Bolatito was once in your shoes and she transitioned from finance to tech and founded Canada's largest online Africa's grocery store called Mychopchop. And she now, in addition to that, helps multi-million-dollar brands grow at Shopify Plus. Bolatito dedicates her time to helping first generation immigrants succeed in Canada, and she's here to share how she navigated her path into tech. Might I say, an unconventional path into tech, and I'm hoping that you can learn a lot from my journey. Welcome to the show, Bola.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Amazing. So, it was interesting that you and I were having a conversation right before this. And I think that will be a natural note to carry into this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you were going to share about, how your business background helped you navigate into this world. So I'm just going to hand it over to you.
Okay, so I will just give a quick background story. I studied chemistry for my undergrad before going ahead to study business because of my passion for um, entrepreneurship. I did my undergrad in Nigeria, and as a university student, then I realized that I was always finding things to do. So I had like I always had a business at the time, So all through my undergrad years, I ran like 3 or 4 different businesses. And so I knew that chemistry wasn't it for me. And so when I moved to Canada as an international student, I got my first job as an advisor, as a client advisor at the bank. But because of my, should I say, passion for always finding opportunities to add value and then translating it into money, um, I started to think about that. Plus, I'm naturally adventurous when it comes to food, and so finding African groceries in the small town where I lived was really difficult. We had to drive 3 hours back and forth for African groceries. And so I identified that as an opportunity. And even though I was working at the bank, I decided to pursue that opportunity because I thought if I have this problem, I bet 1,000 more people also need the African groceries. And so that was how my entrepreneurial journey in Canada started. And even though I worked in the bank as an advisor, I graduated from that into, the personal banking side of the bank, where I was a banking advisor and then eventually a business banking advisor. But while I was working at the bank, I was also running my business. And as a young graduate, then the I discovered Shopify as a platform that could help me to turn my idea into an e-commerce business. And so myself and my husband, we co-founded Mychopchop, and we built Mychopchop from the ground, using Shopify platform and studying the resources within Shopify blog to, build the e-commerce business. And so after about 6 years working in the bank, I decided to pivot into tech. And so I had to do a skill map to, identify what my current skills were, having worked at the bank for over 6 years and also running a business. At that time, I was running the business for about 3 years. So I did a skill map to identify my skills and to identify which of those skills were transferable into tech. And so it was a merchant success manager. The merchant success manager role was like a natural path for me because I had already worked as an account manager in the bank, and of course I was already building an e-commerce business. And so After identifying those skills that were transferable, the next question was, where would I want to work? And of course, I've been building my business on a platform that for 3 years. And I was so passionate about that platform because it gave my idea life. And so I became intentional about where I wanted to work and said, okay, now that I've identified this role, it could be a merchant success manager or customer success, but in Shopify, it's called merchant success manager. And so I decided to, land a job in Shopify. And I was applying in Shopify for over 6 to 7 months. I wasn't getting an interview. And so I reached out to a recruiter that I met while I was studying my MBA, while I was doing my MBA at Laurier University. And so I reached out to her, told her that I was, trying to get a job at Shopify, shared my personal story with her, my hands-on experience with Shopify, and I built that connection. And then I took it a step further. I went onto LinkedIn. I searched for all the employees at Shopify, and then I narrowed it down to the Black employees at Shopify because I thought it would be easier for me to connect with people that look like me. And so I reached out to some Black employees at Shopify, told them that I was trying to apply for a job at Shopify. And of course, they also made introductions. And so once I landed a job interview, I reached out to these folks that I, reached out to on LinkedIn, and they helped me to prep for my interview. And that's how I got my job in Shopify. And that's how I pivoted from the banking industry to tech. So it was an intentional journey for me. And I leveraged on my account manager experience at the bank and also my personal experience running an e-commerce business.
Wow. I think you just captured the essence of, what this show and this live stream is about. And it's like in that, I think maybe 3 minute or 4 minute period, you've literally given a masterclass in exactly what this entire show is about. But you dropped so many gems that I want to pick it apart, one by one, right? In terms of how you thought about it. I think the one interesting piece to me, and that's usually how we get started. But again, you had brought a unique channel, so I wanted to bring it in that way. But it's that inspiration. If you take me back to building this brand or starting out, what came up in your mind that helped you figure out that technology was going to be the way to get that idea to market? Because this could have been like a brick and mortar store or something like that. And then second of all is that at what point did you realize that, you wanted to leave the bank and build a career in technology? Because even though it makes sense from your perspective, from what you were doing, but I can see how that can be daunting and intimidating to people.
Those are two great questions. So the first, I'll answer the first one, which is around Mychopchop and why I decided to leverage on technology. I should say that before we started Mychopchop, I had no idea about e-commerce or the e-commerce world. I knew nothing about that. Remember, my undergrad was in chemistry, so I had a full-on science background. But like I mentioned, for my African groceries shopping, we had to drive. So I lived in a small town called Sarnia. So we had to drive 3 hours to Toronto, another 3 hours back. And I thought, oh, this is not viable. And so, of course, I went online and tried to find an African grocery store online where I could, shop for this groceries without having to do that long drive. And at that time, which was now 7 years ago, there was no online African grocery store at all in Canada. And I thought, okay, if there is none yet, then maybe this is an opportunity. Remember, I talked about my background already. Even as an undergrad in Nigeria, I always had something. It's as simple as somebody just coming to my room all the time for cold water. And then I just went to buy a crate of water and started selling bottled water, because why would you want to always come to my room? So I'm that kind of, I have that mindset already. And so I thought, okay, how can I get this online so that people anywhere in Canada and the US can, order their groceries and get it delivered to them, so that they don't have to, go through this stress that I'm going through. And luckily, there was an entrepreneurship incubator in my college then. So I told them about my idea, and somebody was just listening to me talk, and then the person asked if I knew about Shopify. So that piqued my interest, around e-commerce and getting businesses online. So that's how I started. Really, it's not like I had any background knowledge about e-commerce. I just identified the problem, and then I tried to find a solution, and technology just seemed to be, the viable solution at that time. And then
Wow.
the
I
second
mean, go ahead.
question was around how did I make the move from banking to tech? So already, even while I was working at the bank, remember, I was already starting to build my business. So I was reading so much about e-commerce. I was learning so much about marketing and everything around the e-commerce world. And while I was on my maternity leave, I went for my MBA. So that was a good break for me. The 18 months was a good break for me to do a reset. So even though I went back to school for my MBA, I was starting to think about what would be the next step for my career. And so I thought, okay, I've been working in this, I've been running this business for 3 years now. Um, how can my career support my business, and how can my business support my career? And so I think that was how I just started to think about, you know, it's great that I work at the bank, but how does this align with, my goal overall? And I didn't see the alignment. And so pivoting to tech just seemed natural. And I started to just work my way, into tech that way.
Yeah, yeah, that's really great. And to follow up on that, right? Because in fact, I have a whole video about this on my channel,
Okay.
but I want you to speak to, because like that's theoretical, right? You lived it. First of all, like, as someone who doesn't know what that pivot, because it's not like you had it all figured out and then
No,
built the map. How does one look into the future and make a plan on a journey you've never been? That's the first part. And then, the other part is like, how important was that, like having a vision in helping you make that transition?
that's great. So, I mean, there is, at the end of the day, I believe whether it's intentional or not, we all have a vision of where we are going. You might not really be intentional about the steps you're taking, but whatever you're doing is leading you up to something, right? And for me, I think one of the things that helped me through that journey was leveraging on my network. So I had people around me that were already in tech that I was already speaking to. I had, somebody sit down with me to do my skill mapping exercise with me. I had like people around me that were asking me questions, like thought provoking questions to help me just think beyond where I was at that time. And then also, I think exposure is also a big thing here. Like for me, one, the people I surrounded myself with, the books I was reading, also I was already exposed to the tech world because of my business. And so i I was thinking ahead. So remember, I mentioned that when I was doing my skill mapping exercise, one of the questions I asked myself was, where I am now, how is this going to help me, to get to where I'm going? Does this align? And so I think the first question for everyone is to really, you know, understand where they are currently positioned in their career, and then ask themselves where they want to be. I know it seemed like a question that we all hear all the time when we're interview prepping, but it's something we should also ask ourselves. Like, where do you see yourself in 5 years, or where do you see yourself in 3 years? And then work your way back and see how, what you're doing at the moment aligns with where you're going. So I believe that was what helped me. um, I know you asked a two-part question. I'm not sure if this answers your question, but
Yeah, yeah, I think it mostly did, because again, it was that one, how did you map it, right, without having seen the journey, and how helpful was
right.
that? So I think you've kind of like touched on both.
Okay.
And something that was interesting to me, about your journey, and now that you talk about it, is kind of like the similarity in our journeys. And I just want to put it out there almost as a call out. Um, you know, one of the easiest ways, you talked about it, is that, you weren't strange to this or new to this because you had built an e-commerce business. And like that's building an a couple of e-commerce businesses actually is what led my career in product. Because if you're going to be an entrepreneur, and this will be a good segue into the next question, right? You have to figure out, the technology. In this case, even if it's no code, right? You have to understand it end to end. Like when I hit this button, where do the images go? How does it look? Even if you're not doing it the most perfect way an e-commerce site should be built, I'm sure that now that you're a merchant success manager, you can laugh at some of your mistakes in
Yeah,
the past. Like, I
right.
shouldn't have done that. But ultimately, even not doing it the right way still gets you much closer to doing it the right way than not doing it at all, right?
You're right.
And I found it, especially in my case, that was very powerful. In that, so you touch many things. You touch understanding dimensions and things like that, and how that affects user experience, marketing the product. Because there's one thing about getting all excited about building this business you're passionate about, but it can be womp 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 if it's like next day you put it up and like you got all
And
this
nobody,
inventory
yeah,
and you're not making any sales. So you got to figure out marketing and customer acquisition costs and all this other
yeah.
different terms. That's not why you did it. You did it because you wanted to get people their groceries, right? But now you
Yeah.
have to figure
I
all
knew
these things out. But
nothing. I knew nothing about e-commerce. Like I had no idea. I just knew that I wanted to sell and I wanted people to just buy online and ship. That's all I knew about the business at that time. But while you were talking, I think one thing I missed in the previous question that I want to quickly address before we move on to the next question is um, you asked how I did the skill mapping for a role that for
you've
an
never
industry
done.
I've never been before. Yeah, so let me answer that well now. I think I didn't get it the first time. One thing I've learned is not to compartment. It's not to compartmentalize any of your experiences, whether it was professional or personal. Don't like when you're doing your skill mapping and when you're writing out the list of your skills. Don't say, "Oh, I did this just at my workplace. Oh, this one doesn't count because it's just a personal thing." I think a lot of us shoot ourselves in the foot when we do that. One thing that helped me was, when I was putting out all my skills, I it was a combination of everything. It was a combination of not just my professional experience, my life experience. We only have one life, right? There's nothing like professional life or personal life. It's your life experience. And so not compartmentalizing it and really acknowledging all your experiences, putting that on the table, and then having a holistic picture of those experiences is one way to do the skill map exercise and really identify which of your skills are transferable, because no experience is wasted, right? And every experience can be transferred to another industry, depending on how you see it and how you position yourself. So that's what I wanted to address before we move on.
Beautiful. And I'll just say welcome if you're joining us for the first time. This is the Working in Tech podcast. This is a podcast where we bring in, professionals across the tech industry, across different roles, to share their experience on their journey breaking into tech, with the goal of inspiring you and educating you about the steps that it took. And speaking about education, you've just dropped, a gem there that I think is a lot of people overlook. There may be somebody who works in customer service or retail, right? So when they want to go to a project management role, they go, I've never been a project manager, so I don't see how I'm able to do that. But this same person in their personal life could be someone who's like, their friend is planning a party. They're like, you know what? Pause everything. Let's do it this way. Have you called this person? Have you done
Right.
this? Have you done that? And like you do that day in, day out. But once you hear project management and you hear all these other things, you freeze up. You may not know the tools, and that's the one part. That's the technical piece, right? Whether it's your Jira boards or you know your agile meetings and all of those things, but you have the recipe, like the core thing, being able to stay on top of things, paying attention to
Hmm.
those little details, bringing the many pieces that may not necessarily be together, right? And that, I just wanted to kind of like take it home, because you make a really really strong point, and it's like Don't worry about whether it's like something that you're doing in your personal life or something
Mm-hmm.
that you've done professionally. Tie it all together and bring yourself as a whole package.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very, very, very powerful. So, I think that in terms of, I think the last thing that I wanted to ask about the intro before we move on to other things is like, you then talked about, strategically building your network, strategically building your roadmap into this company. And you talked on multiple interesting facets that I think is really important. Um, one thing that we advise all the time is like, if you want to break into tech, you have to apply early, you have to apply often, you have to basically force your way through the door, right? Because you miss 100% of shots you don't take.
That's
The
true.
second part that you dropped that was important, right, is strategically positioning yourself
Mm-hmm.
and reaching out, right? Because there's some time that your resume just don't look as good as you think it
Right.
does. Because as someone making a transition, you might be competing on someone that's been 5 years in the industry. And when that recruiter is going to send that resume, they don't have the nuance of your experience.
Right.
It's hard to quantify. But when they've had that one-on-one interaction, it makes it a stronger sell.
Mm-hmm.
Where when they add a note to that resume and send to the hiring manager, they might say, oh, this person hasn't worked in a market success role in tech before, but they have a website, they have a store on the
Mm-hmm.
platform, and they said this to me that you also expressed to me when you wanted this candidate. So I think they're the
Right.
right fit. All of that is lost when you just direct apply alone. And
Yeah.
then the last you said that I think is very important, especially for minorities in tech, is that affinity matters. Affinity matters, right? One of the reasons why a lot of other races leverage it, whether it's an uncle, an aunt that's worked
Yeah.
at Google, Microsoft, Dell. One, they're giving them back information on the things that the company is looking for.
Mm-hmm.
They're telling them about the interview process because interview processes differ very much
Of course.
across the
Yeah.
industry. All of these companies have their ethos, their missions, all of these things. So if you have a similar interview strategy for all the companies, it's not going to work. So again, long-winded, but ultimately, I think I want you to maybe help me or help explain like why all of those different pieces and all those different things that you did mattered in your journey and how all of them tie together to get you to this position now.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great question. So already, once I identified that I wanted to work in Shopify, I started to apply only at Shopify. Well, in retrospect now, I don't know if that was the smartest move. I think I should have like applied in other places, but I was just so passionate about this platform because I've been using it for my business. So I had that soft spot for the company. And so I was applying, like you said, I was just applying. I applied for like over 7 months. When I go into my email now and I see all the rejection emails, I just smile. I was doing that consistently for 7 months and I wasn't making any headway. And I thought, okay, do I know anyone that works here? I just wanted to talk to somebody to, understand what I was doing wrong and to, just help me to position myself for the job. And so I remember that I had met a recruiter um, on campus while I was doing my MBA. So I reached out to her and, told her that I'd been applying to Shopify. Again, I just shared my story. People connect very well with your personal story. So if you don't have a personal story, I think it's important to build one, around what you're trying to get so that you can connect with these people that you reach out to. So I just told her my story, my experience, working with the platform, my passion for the platform, and my efforts in trying to get a job there. And of course, she connected with me right away and you know introduced me to the recruiter for the merchant success role. One thing I should also mention is when you're reaching out to people, know what you want and just go straight to the point.
Mm,
Like, don't waste people's time. Like, don't just beat around the bush. Like, don't reach out to a recruiter and say, I'm trying to get a job in your company. Be specific. I'm trying to get this, I'm applying to this role in your company. How can I position myself, for the next opportunity? Right? Or don't
mm,
say, oh, let me know when something opens up. You need the job. So be specific
mm,
about the role, right? And tell them the efforts you've been making so that they see that you're serious about it, and just because people want to help if you tell them what you really need from them. So anyways,
Mm,
so I told her that, and she introduced me to the recruiter. And of course, I spoke to the recruiter. I built that relationship and kept in touch with her. And so when the job, when I landed the interview, I already knew that I'd been applying to this company for 7 months. I wanted to make the most of this opportunity, and I wanted to talk to somebody about interviewing and what Shopify is like, what are the expectations, and all of that. And so it was during COVID, everybody was online. And so I just went on LinkedIn, right? I searched for all the employees in Shopify. I just wanted somebody I could connect easily with. And so I narrowed it down to the Black people that work at Shopify. And then I further narrowed it down to people with Nigerian names. Again, it was
mm,
just me trying to make it easy for myself to connect with somebody virtually. And so I reached out to these people, and honestly, it was everybody I reached out to responded back to me. Um,
mm,
I was just, I don't know if it was luck or if I don't know. They reached out. They reached out to they responded to me, and I had like a 10-15 minutes chat with all of them. And there were three people that I really, really connected with that we are still friends till date. And so I told them about my interview, and they were so happy to. People want to help. That's what I found out. People always want to help if they're in the position to help. And these people took it upon themselves, to help me through the interview process. And that's how
mm,
I landed the job. So did this make a huge difference? Oh, definitely. um, it made a difference connecting with somebody, and even for the interview prep, it made a huge difference when I had somebody to help me. The first interview opportunity I got with Shopify landed me the job offer, even though I'd been applying for 7 months. So it wasn't like I didn't have the skills. It wasn't like I couldn't do the job. I just needed to be strategic in, getting myself in front of the hiring managers. And then also I needed to also, you know, be empowered, or should I say well armed, for every of those interview processes, because I know that I was interviewing alongside thousands of people that probably had more experience, or like they were already in the tech industry or probably in similar roles. So I knew that I was up against so many people, and I didn't just want to interview blindly. And so I had to leverage on everything I had, which was my network.
mm. And I think you raise a very important point there. You mentioned it without even fully mentioning it, because now that I'm thinking about like even interviewing process, of course there's a lot that you have to do on the day of when you show up, but I've heard hiring managers talk, right? And oftentimes the reputation for everybody coming to interview isn't zero,
Yes,
right?
yes,
You're not
yes,
starting from a clean slate. And
that's
what
right.
that means is like if you think about points on the board, let's say the point you have to get to is 90% to qualify.
Mm-hmm.
If you start at a strong 35, it's a lot easier to get that job than if you're starting
And
at zero. Because
to
at 35, you only need, you know, I don't know
less
if my
than
math is good, but like 65 points to get
to
to
get
that cutoff.
like, yeah,
But if you're starting at zero, you really can't make any mistakes because you still have to get to 90.
I like
And
that
then that's
analogy.
before you baking, thank you. That's before you baking every other element in that interview process. And
Yeah,
that's why, like, you may not do a round properly, but because overall you're already seen as a strong candidate, that can carry you through. Whereas when you don't bring that, already, like, you can't make any mistakes.
yeah,
And even if you don't, I think there's even still a point where you then end up 90. There has to be a tiebreaker.
that's
And that
true.
tiebreaker can be, you know what? Both of them were great, but they're probably not going to say it. But
That's right.
that's why they will make the decision, is that before we even started talking to her, we knew she was great. So we weren't shocked that she's great. Whereas this other person, they might sound great, but are they really great? Like, can they really do the job? And I
Yeah,
think that's what I take away from your story about being strategic, is that
that's right.
what the biggest success point that we know for sure is that it got you that interview.
Yeah.
But it's also interesting to even wonder, like, how that played out later on in then even finally helping you secure the final opportunity. So to the next point, right, uh, is what if you think about, networking, which is something I wanted to get to, right, or something we always talk about, right? That's really what made this possible.
Mm-hmm.
I think you've already said a lot about, things, for example, like asking the right questions, etc. But what are some other elements? And I know that this is a skill that you even bring from your, building relationships at the bank.
Mm-hmm.
So, as someone who's a seasoned networker as yourself, or building into the relationship building space, what are
Mm-hmm.
some? I'll probably say maybe 3, 4 points that will really be helpful for someone who's completely green and new to this to watch out for when trying to build, new and lasting relationships with other people.
Okay, so I would say that the first is looking for the value you can add to the person or to the relationship. That's a very big one. Um, there are two kinds of people, the takers that just want to take from people, and the givers, right? People are more endeared to you when you give to them. So for me, the way I think about it is if there is somebody that I really want to connect with, I'm not thinking about what I want to get from them. I'm thinking about how I can add some, sort of value to them.
Mm,
And um, it's not sometimes you might not be able to identify that right away, but once you start to talk to the person, you are able to kind of figure out one thing that you can add to the person, also just to build that long lasting relationship or impression with people. um, I know when you reach, for me, for example, when I reached out to the people I connected with on LinkedIn, I wouldn't say that I had something to give. I had a question. I wanted to connect with them. And so I started by, sharing my story and just introducing myself. And so that leads me to the next point about um, being authentic so that you can build trust. Be yourself, be authentic, share your story, find something that is probably in common with this person you're trying to connect with, right? So for example, the people I reached out to on LinkedIn, I did not know them, but I knew that they had Nigerian names. So that was something that we had in common. So I was able to connect with them on that level. And then of course I shared my story. That was me being authentic and being myself. Right. And then as I started to build the relationship, I identified ways that I could, add some value to them also. It doesn't have to be something physical or something tangible. And so that helped me to build that relationship. My mentor now at work, um, when I connected with her, I did not start by saying, I want you to be my mentor. She was new to the company. And so I reached out to her and just asked if she had connected with um, other colleagues of hers on the same level. And she said, of course not, because she was new in the company. And so I started to give her direction. Oh, I think you should connect with this person. I think you should connect with that person. What project are you working on? How can I help you? And that was how we built that relationship and that friendship. And it just organically, grew into the relationship just evolved itself. But I started by
mm,
thinking about ways to add value to that person, and the relationship has been mutually beneficial for us. And so that's how I approach every relationship that I'm trying to build. In terms of networking, when I go for an event or when I reach out to people, i I let people talk about themselves, and then in talking about themselves I find what we have in common, and then I build up on that. um, so I know you said top three things. So the first that I mentioned was find ways that you can add value to that relationship or to that person. It doesn't have to be tangible. Be your authentic self. And listen. Let them talk about themselves. Listen, because in listening, you get to know them. You get to know what matters to them. You get to know, how you can be of help, and you get to um, find out what you have in common, and that helps you to just build that relationship.
I like all 3 points, but there's actually a concept around that last one that resonates very deeply. It's a saying that around, to be interesting, you have to be interested, right?
There you go.
Because if you want to add, if it, you can't please, people you're not that don't please you. If that makes sense, like you have to have found that commonality for you to be able to find things that will be interesting to them. It's like imagine someone who loves soccer and you start talking about golf. It's not gonna like, it's cool, but it's like it's nothing. But once you know someone likes soccer and you guys connect on that, it's like it's game over, right? So I
Yeah,
think
and
that
me, I
that's
know you
that
like
piece.
soccer.
Yes, yes, I'm a huge fan. How did you know that, by the
From one of your
way?
videos.
Oh, and that's probably another one that's so important too. Right? I see it, and I definitely want to call it out again since we're on this topic. It's doing research. I
Yeah.
think that I see so many like leaders do it. Like it's almost second nature. And when I see them successful, it's not a surprise to me
No.
because it's like it's your biggest weapon. I mean, think about how there was I've forgotten what book I read about someone who story time people, someone who
Mhm.
it, there was a lady who was trying to buy, right, and this guy wanted to sell art, but among like the people who were supposed to be like elite, she was seen as someone who was of lowly character, even though they were extremely wealthy, right? So this really cultured man became my friend, would guide her a little bit, tell her she has impeccable taste, tell her all of these things. And because he built and cultivated this relationship and made her feel welcome in a circle where many people ridiculed and laughed at her, she only ever bought paintings and art from this guy
Wow.
because he elevated her sense of self
Hmm.
and she trusted him because even though she had all the wealth in the world, her money couldn't buy that one thing, and it became that one thing to her. So that when and I'm not saying be manipulative to people, that's not the point.
Yeah.
But I
I
think
get.
the overall point in there is like, go and be that to someone else. It's like too many
Right.
people are always focused on that interested part. It's always what I want. Give us and take it. I think you already took it away, right? So I think
Hmm.
it's ultimately figuring out ways to add value. And maybe this even brings out home that point. It doesn't always have to be tangible. It can be
Yeah.
a listening ear. It can be that you even take interest enough in what somebody has done,
Right.
because a lot of times when people do something, they put a lot of effort into it, right? So you calling that out and say, "Oh, I saw that you made that really nice art," or "I've been on your website, that really looks cool."
Hmm.
Immediately you gain like 500 points. Immediately,
Like
right?
me saying that
Because
I
it's
know
like,
you like soccer because I watched your video.
yeah, because it's like this person has actually taken the time, and that's so powerful.
Yeah.
So, um, next question is, so in the actual interviews, right? What are some of the things, you did it one time, got it one time, right? That's something that a lot of people struggle with. So what are some, interview tips or something that helped you in your interview, or something that even, your mentors shared with you that you found to be helpful?
Okay. Um, Something that my coach recently told me about interview that I found really fascinating. I'll share here. So she told me that interviewing is just like dating, right? It's not, your resume already has your skills, your educational background, everything. You have it on your resume already. when it's time for you to interview, one, you need to go in with that confidence, knowing that um, you you have what it takes. And so you have to go in with that posture, and then there is really nothing to prove. Your resume has proven that you are a good fit for the job, and the interview process is just for you to be yourself and share your story. I know when it comes to technical interviews, it's different because you might need to do some coding and prove it's different. So what I'm saying might not be 100% relatable to people that do actual technical exercises for their interviews. But when it comes to the is it the vocal part of
Behavioral
talk, the
and
behavioral,
situational.
the situational, it's about you um, being yourself and connecting with the interviewer. Really, it's not even really about your skills at that point. It's about connecting with the interviewer, sharing stories that would position you in the mind of the interviewer and that would leave a lasting impression in the mind of the interviewer. So that's one. Another is, and you already mentioned that, is doing your research, right? Doing your research about the company, doing your research about the interviewer, the person interviewing you. You want to know them to an extent. Everything is online these days. You can just Google the person's name, go on LinkedIn. Sometimes when you Google some people's names, their whatever publications is out there about them comes up also. Like read about it, know the person, because again, like I said, it's about connecting with the person you're interviewing with. It's not really about your skills at this point. So I already mentioned being confident. I mentioned doing your research, and also just honestly, I think those are the two biggest pieces. And when I even think about myself now, and when I interviewed for my job at Shopify, I so for the people that I connected with on LinkedIn, part of the interview prep was me telling them, okay, these are the people I'm interviewing with. What can you tell me about them? Right? And then they
Hmm.
would tell me, oh, this person is a numbers person. Oh, this person, you want to talk about this. This person, likes, this person is. So one of the people I interviewed with was an entrepreneur too. So they told me, oh, this person is an entrepreneur too. This person also runs a business. So you can connect with this person on that front. And so once I got into the interview, like she was already smiling and said, oh, the previous person that interviewed you told me already that I would like you. And I know where that was coming from because we could connect. She's a mom, she's an entrepreneur, and she's also working full time. So already it was like us just filling each other out. Already we were already connected. So it wasn't, I don't think there was anything more I was going to say that would, change or sway her to the other side. You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
I think these
Hmm.
are the two big pieces. Being prepared also, you can't over prepare. So be prepared, be confident, know that you have what it takes. That's why you're in front of the interviewer, and then do your research on the company, the role, the ethos, the mission of the company, and also on the person that you will be interviewing with.
Yeah, this is all really good. This is really, really, really good. Um, Again, it's still the Working in Tech podcast. And again, I hope you're having a great time. I hope you're learning as much as I am. Tito is dropping some really, really, really fire advice on how to navigate your tech career. And again, this is the point. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the chat. We're about to get to the Q&A portion. So if you have any questions for her that you can directly address, please feel free to leave them in the comments. Um, you know, it's interesting that you bring it back, that part that I'd mentioned before, and like it's so crucial because you can imagine like you have the perfect stories and you want to tell the stories, but it's the connection that's the most important thing. Because I'll put it this way: imagine, like for example, maybe someone used to be an ex-entrepreneur, right, but they miss it. So when they get the opportunity to talk to you, maybe that's what they want to talk about. So they then start to bring up those questions just so that they can live vicariously through you and live through experiences. But imagine all you did to prepare for that interview is just numbers and data and all these other things that worked in the last round. So when you get here and they ask that question, instead of going in detail, you're dismissing it or you just say, almost like, that's not why I'm here. I want to prove to you,
Mhm.
I really know my numbers. I really know this stuff. Like I'm good. Well, who told you that that's what this person is checking for, right? They wanted maybe they get a taste of your personality, right? Is this person going to be a good fit for the team? And their way of doing that is like, see how you connect on your stories. But
Yeah.
it doesn't happen. Why? Because you didn't have that insight.
Yeah.
It's so key because, for some people, like, let's say you're getting, let's say there's a contract and you're going to an agency,
Mhm.
they could give you that information, right? Oh, this is this person you have to know. But in the case that doesn't exist, that's the next best thing is like knowing exactly, you know, what you're up against will set you up nicely to prepare. Because again, you probably have, let's say, 48 hours, or 72 hours to prepare for this interview. So you can
Yeah.
only cover so much, right? So it's like, how do you make the best use of the time that you have to prepare in the best way possible to ace that interview? And that's why doing that initial homework is such a crucial part. And I like you. I really appreciate you calling that out. So we've mostly focused on the tech career part, but I want to go back to even what led to this whole thing. First of all, shout out to Shopify because one of the things that I see that's so interesting about the company, because I've also interviewed there, it didn't quite work out, but um, even the hiring manager was also an entrepreneur who's actually been on Shark Tank, one of my favorite shows too. So it's so interesting, like how many entrepreneurs both go into and come out of Shopify.
Yeah.
So again, that's something fascinating. But tell me about your business startup story. Like, especially, I think you've covered some part of it, but I more about like how you set it up, how your initial orders, and how you just were able to grow that.
Okay. So I started, um, so it was my husband and I that started Mychopchop in 2018 now, or 2017, sorry. And when we started, again, like I said, it was just an idea. We had no background in e-commerce. Everything we knew was just wanted to sell this product online and build it on Shopify. Um, we we started really small. So we just started by buying from an African store and just listing it online. We had good pictures, we designed the website, um, and we got some. So we started to run it together while working full time. Eventually, we were able to get some student volunteers to join the team, and then gradually we started to scale the business. So from buying from a store, we started to import it ourselves. From Nigeria, and then we we also then expanded our reach as well. So we started by selling just within Ontario, and then gradually we scaled to shipping to the entire provinces in Canada. And then as the demand started to grow outside of Canada as well, we started to ship to the US. And so we did that for 5 years, and then we um, opened a physical store as well last year. We That was a test run. We had been doing it online, and we wanted to see what running brick and mortar would um, look like. So we did that for another year, and then we closed the brick and mortar store and focused more on the online store. And what I would say there is that when we started Mychopchop, again, we did not even know what we were getting ourselves into. A lot of people told us that if it was possible, somebody else would have done it. Besides, you are international student. Why are you even thinking about this? But for us, it was like, let's try it. If we fail, we fail, and if it works out, then it works out. But even though at that time we knew nothing about it, we started to gather resources to help us to build that knowledge and the skills that we needed to scale the business. And so even when we were going to launch the brick and mortar store, we were like, we've been here before. Like when we were starting the online, we knew nothing about it. So even though we don't know so much about brick and mortar, we would still try that out. And so we were not afraid to fail either, but that did not work out. So we, focused more on the online store. In terms of growth, one thing that I've come to learn is I know that sometimes people ask me, you're running an online store, how can you also have a career? And I've learned that you can actually have both. It doesn't have to be either or. But one thing that you need to come to terms with is that you need to be comfortable with the pace of your growth for your business and for your career, right? You can't compare yourself with somebody that just has their career and that's all they, invest their time, resources, and everything into. And you can't compare the growth of your business also with, the person that just runs a business and invest their time and everything into. And so for me, the growth of Mychopchop for us, I'm very comfortable with the pace of the growth. Like I said, we were doing the online store for over 5 years before we launched the brick and mortar store. We tried the brick and mortar store for a year. It wasn't making financial sense for us, and so we closed that out. And we've been able to juggle both together while growing our career at the pace that we are comfortable with, while growing our businesses also at the pace that we are comfortable with. One thing that has also helped is being intentional with how I'm growing my career and where I'm growing my career also. That has also helped me to grow my business, and my business knowledge and experience has also helped me to grow my career as well. So yeah, I think that answers your question about how I've been able to grow the business. If there's
Yeah, and
anything, and you can call it out and I'll be happy to address it.
what I was even gonna say was that I really like is the fact that I think you're touching on something really, really important and cool,
Yeah.
is how you're able to leverage, your experience. First of all, like understanding the pace. I think that is so
Yeah.
important. So in fact, I thought you were talking to me when you said that because know I have a full-time job. I'm transitioning. I just started my executive MBA.
Oh,
I'm doing content.
congratulations. Wow.
Thank you. I just did that last week. So really kicking my butt. And
I
and
can
it's so
imagine.
interesting that you say that because, I'd set some really ambitious goals for content and things like that. And I think that I might struggle to meet them. But
Mhm.
I think what matters is because someone who's doing YouTube alone or doing content, they're gonna have way more
Of
opportunities, right?
course.
But I'm basically like living three lives, right? So it's
Yeah.
like
It's a
give
lot.
yourself grace from that perspective. And
Mhm.
this would apply to someone who also has a full-time job,
Yeah.
family, and is trying
Yeah.
to break into tech. You
Yeah.
know, understand what you're doing in the context of the space that you're in. I think that's
Mhm.
so important,
Yeah.
right? Because ultimately, I think it really helps you to build, one, to give yourself the patience. Because sometimes I see that, I saw something that was, it's like burnout happens not really because of stress.
Hmm.
Because if you think about it, like I would imagine, like, pop stars, you know, artists, musicians, sports people, they're very stressed people. They go
Yeah.
through high stress situations, they're working amounts of hours, but most of them won't talk about burnout because they get the rewards of the work. So real
Mm.
burnout actually happens when you're working towards a goal and you're not getting the results. And most importantly, the results that you think you should be getting, right?
Mm.
Because, and why are we not getting those results that we think we should be getting? Because our frame of reference. So think about it like if you're a YouTuber and you're looking at numbers, or this person got 10,000 views, this person got this, and this person got that. One, you're not seeing the people who are not getting it. You only see those people getting it. And that comparison then
The
becomes a
context
problem in
is
us.
different. Yeah.
Exactly. Like you're using the wrong data. So I think that that's such a powerful thing that you touch on there.
Yeah.
This one has been really, really good. But
Yeah.
we do have some questions, so I'll get to one of them. So
Okay.
Martine is asking, what are some software slash tools that you use in your everyday job at Shopify, if any?
Okay. So I use Salesforce for CRM, um, Slack for messaging, Asana for project management or tasks management, SalesLoft as part of the CRM suite of products. Because again, I work, as a merchant success manager, and a bunch of my role really is about managing relationships. So CRM is the biggest part of the tools that I work with um, every day, or that I use every day for my job.
So Jason just asked, what's the salary range, for merchant success partners, you know, partner success managers, as they might be called in other roles, as kind of like maybe like a percentile. So if you think about like, entry level, mid level, senior executive, what does that look like?
For merchant success,
Yes.
I assume. Okay, so that's a I mean, it's hard to give a number. I'll give an average because it's the reason I say it's hard to give a number is because your salary range one is based on your salary is based on your expertise, your location. For example, Canadian employees are paid differently from how much American employees are being paid. And I'm sure that's the same for most industries or most companies. And then even when you narrow it down to Canada, your location in Canada also, determines how much you'll be paid, whether you're in Ontario or BC. But on an average for Shopify, I would say 135, 140. You have the potential to even make more because the compensation structure is base pay 80% and 20% commission. And when it comes to the commission, I mean, the sky is your limit. You can make as much as much as possible, depending on your output. So I hope that helps.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because like I was talking to an account director at a tech company yesterday, and she's like, "You gotta come into sales," because
I
I'm
mean,
like, because she
commission
was
is
like, it's the OTE.
Yeah, no, there is no limit to what you can make with that. So
Yeah, yeah, that is so helpful. And there was another part that I just wanted to touch on very quickly. Like, how helpful is it that you're a merchant yourself working in merchant success? Because I
right.
think that that's something that it might get overlooked, but I think it's very important, right?
It's very helpful. And um, for me, I feel like that is what makes me unique. We all have what makes us unique, right? And that's why I said it's always important to list out all your experiences, whether there is nothing like professional or personal experience. Like there will be something unique about you. Um, for me, because I deal with merchants every day, as a merchant myself, one, I find it easy to connect with my merchants. When I'm introducing myself or at the start of every relationship, I tell my merchants that, or whoever my person of contact is, I tell them I'm a merchant myself. I use Shopify every day, so I I understand what it means to be a merchant. I understand what it means to run a business, and so you can trust that um, you know I'm I'm on your team as a partner. And
Mm.
so when I'm positioning a certain product to my merchant, because I'm a merchant myself, um, I'm able to position it in a way that resonates with them. So I meet with executive stakeholders. I meet with stakeholders on different levels of these organizations, and so depending on the persona of the person I'm meeting with, I position my statement or the product in a way that would resonate with them, because I run a small business. There was a time where I was the CEO. I was the one doing the product marketing. I was the one doing the growth marketing. I was the one doing everything. And so when I'm meeting with somebody in marketing, I have a not a I won't say I have a I won't say I have a full understanding of their role or of what their priorities are, but I can understand. um I can relate with them, and I find it easy to position those products with them. And then of course, when it comes to us having those growth conversations and strategic conversations, I wear my merchant hat on one side and my Shopify merchant success manager on one side as well. And so
Mm.
doing that helps me to relate well with my merchant, and also just position um, whatever it is I'm trying to get them to adopt in a way that resonates with them.
Mm. That is so powerful, and it's like I think the biggest point that I think brings it home in terms of what you just said is like just bringing every bit of yourself, every part of yourself to the mission, to the work, because everything has every value.
Yeah.
So this is a podcast. I know we're on the hour where, if you have any shout outs, you have any plugs, whatever it is, like this will be the opportunity to share it.
Okay, before I do that, I know you mentioned that we have something in common and that you started an e-commerce business, you said, which,
I've got a couple actually.
yeah, okay, do you still run those now? I'm just curious to
No,
know.
no, 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 I don't. But I'm actually still, I still want to do it, but I haven't had the courage to fully go through the process. But I
Yeah,
think now that we've connected and you work at Shopify,
reach
maybe you
out.
can
Yes,
you can help
yes,
me live my dreams.
yes, yes. We can talk about that outside of this. Like I said, I work with enterprise brands on Shopify, to build their B2B, D2C retail, and every part of their business. So if there's anything you're looking to start on Shopify, especially, or maybe even in the e-commerce world, we can talk about that outside of this interview. But thank you for having me. I already talked about my Chop Chop already. The website is mychopchop.ca. We ship online. We ship African groceries within Canada and to the US. So you can check us out. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn or on Instagram. I'm always happy to connect with people. I'm happy to help people. I know that I've talked about how I've leveraged on, my network from the start of my career, even up until now, which I still continuously do. So if there's any way that I can be of help, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn and I'll be happy to help. And one thing I just wanted to say, based on my experience, is that it's not just about working smart. So for those that are still looking to transition or to pivot into tech, it's not about just working hard. It's not about the thousands of resumes that you throw out. It's about cultivating the right relationships and leveraging on those relationships, the people you surround yourself with, the people you connect with, the connections you make. All of these connections and this network can help you to make all the difference and help you to make the pivots easier and even faster. So at the end of the day, it's not just about what you know, but what you know. So use those
Mm.
relationships and
You're dropping so many gems. You're dropping so many gems. Final
yeah.
question. We did have one final one, and then we can wrap it. So, what does career progression look like, in the partner success realm?
I'll speak for my role as a merchant success manager. As a merchant success manager in Shopify, you know almost everything about the business. You know almost everything about the products. In Shopify, you work with not just merchants, you work with different teams within Shopify. And so when it comes to career progression, it can go in any direction. Just because you have some knowledge about almost or if not all of the products in Shopify. And so I've found that for a lot of people, merchant success has been their entry way into Shopify. And so from merchant success, you can decide to go into product, you can decide to stay in merchant success, you can go into partner success or partnerships. So it just depends on what you enjoy about the role. You can even go into sales if the sales part of the role is what you enjoy. So it boils down to what you really enjoy about the role, and then you can decide to carve a niche for yourself in that area and progress your career in that direction.
And then is it like partner success manager, senior partner success manager, director of partner
No, it
success, or how
doesn't
does
have
that
to go
look?
that way. It doesn't have to go from
Okay.
there. You can go to product marketing, you can go to
Mm,
sales, you can go to account management, you can go to partnerships or partner manager. It doesn't have to be, oh, as a merchant success manager, this is the role you have to go. You can be
mm,
anywhere. Again, I'm speaking for Shopify. It might be different from other companies, but I'm just speaking based
mm.
on my experience and my context.
Yeah, thank you. I think that was really helpful. Even like in terms of like how to think about career progression, it's not just lateral, but also
It's
like
not lateral.
um, yeah, thank you so much. I think this has been a really, really great episode, really enlightening. I think you dropped so many valuable um, thoughts, and I really, really appreciate your very candid approach and you willing to share the hour and just talk through this. I think it was really helpful. Thank you so
Thank
much.
thank you for having me. I really enjoyed chatting with you as well. And thanks to everyone
Amazing.
who joined.
Yeah, so shout out to everyone who joined. We really appreciate you spending your Friday evening with us. We'll be back again next week with another episode of the Working in Tech podcast. As always, we're bringing amazing guests working across different roles, different industries to share their experience about breaking into tech, to also help you navigate your own journey. And I hope that all of the advice, all of the tips, all of the strategies that is shared on this podcast actually helps you make that jump. Actually, on a final note, I'm going to say this. I was at a tech event 2 days ago, and someone gave me a data point. They said they were planning to apply to a job, and then they watch a certain episode of this podcast three
Oh,
different
wow.
times. So
Amazing.
it's like, I look at the numbers, this many views, that many views. I don't know what it means in the real world, but
Yes,
I'm really excited to see that it is actually delivering the kind of impact that I hoped it would. And thanks to you and every other person who's come to share their stories, because it's really helping out a lot of
I
people.
love that. I love that. You're doing a great job. And congratulations again on your MBA.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That's the show for tonight, guys.